Hello and welcome to this video and to June's book review. Excuse the way I look. I have a mild ear infection, so I'm in a bit of pain. I've obviously been looking after Eloise all day, so I think I've got milk down my top. Yeah, I'm a bit of a mess, but it's the time that I have to film it, so we're going with it. I have 6 books to talk to you about. Well, 3 books, 3 novellas. And I'll explain my reasons for the choices as we go through them. It's been a reasonably successful reading month. She's in a much better pattern with sleeping, and we've got in a much better pattern with our evening, which means that I have some time to read, basically. But you don't need to know about that, you just are here to know about the books that I read, and this one's really dirty on the back. So the first book that I read in June was Girlhood, a letter to my transgender daughter by Caroline Hayes. This is a pseudonym. The author decided not to use anybody's real name so that they could keep anonymity for their family, but they are an author in their own right, I believe. But this is a non-fiction memoir where we're following their family as their youngest child, at the age of about 3, who is born gendered male, says no, they're a girl, and maintains that throughout. So it's a look at how they as a family navigate that. They're also in a very conservative state, so how that happens. It's very much written on the blurb at this, but they have to move to a more liberal state because they get a knock at the door, essentially saying, why are you raising your child like this, and threatened with taking them away and that kind of thing. It's a relatively short book, but it is pretty dense. Like, it's not difficult to read, but it takes a lot of brain power to read. I stupidly thought because it's short I'd read it quickly. I didn't, it took me quite a while, but I enjoyed what I read. It was really interesting to see their different ways that they go about it and all of that kind of thing. The reason I wanted to read this, I read Detransition Baby, which is a novel around transgendered people last year, and I really didn't like it, and I didn't get anything from it, whereas I learnt a lot more with this one. And the family's love is so obvious in this, it just comes off the page. There are 4 children. This is the youngest child, so there are 2 boys in the middle and an eldest girl, and how they all react to it and interact with this kid, and how the mum and dad do and how the grandparents do, it's just fascinating. And what I liked best was how the parents also were like, look, we also need to get used to this idea, like we thought we had a son here, not a daughter, but they went with it and they were accepting and they encouraged and they fought for her and all of that kind of stuff. And it was really just interesting and heartwarming, and also kind of sad as well because of how it's not that accepted, obviously, and there's a lot of research and facts and things about like the murder rates of transgendered people and that kind of stuff. This is all based in the States as well, so as I said, it is a little bit dense and there were patches where it got really slow and it did drag a little bit, but overall I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it. It did make me think, you know, obviously I've just had a child, how would I react if she suddenly was like, no, I'm a boy, I'm a boy, and that kind of thing. So yeah, really thought-provoking, interesting look at the subject, and would recommend. I probably won't be keeping it, despite the really beautiful cover, but would still recommend if it's a topic that you're interested in learning about. So that's A Girlhood by Caroline Hayes. I then decided to go into a novella. On my Kindle it was called The Pink Rose, Secrets, Love and Betrayal, and that was by Alicia Roberts. This is a short story, obviously it's a novella. It was so obvious from the blurb, you basically got the whole story on the blurb. So this follows CEO, rich man, basically, needs a date to a do, asks his accountant, which on the back it says that he's been, you know, trying to get her attention. You don't really get that from the book. Obviously they hit it off, there's a spark, all of that kind of stuff. But what he doesn't know is that she is the cousin of his like biggest business rival. Hence the secrets and betrayal. Yeah. It wasn't great, but it was also about 70 pages long, so there's not a lot you can really critique in it. It was reasonably fleshed out for what it was, except the end, which was very abrupt. I like the fact that they did resolve their issues in an adult way rather than in some romances where you're like, this doesn't work at all in the real world. I would say it probably needs to be longer for it to make more sense, for it to like resonate a bit more, but also I don't think it would still be very good even if it was longer. So yeah, I read it because it was short and I was sat with Eloise having a nap on me and my Kindle was next to me, and I was like, right, well I might as well read something rather than mindlessly scroll on my phone, which is a bad habit that I've got into when she's sleeping on me. I'll read this instead. So I did that over a couple of naps basically, so it also got it off my Kindle and off my TBR. So yeah, I wouldn't really bother with it. I think I got it free when I got my Kindle. I think I've said this before, but when I first got my Kindle I went a bit crazy and just added every free book that I possibly could on there. Most of them aren't very good. So yeah, this was fine. I think I gave it 3 stars. I have to be honest, I don't really remember it now. But yeah, The Pink Rose, Secrets, Love and Betrayal by Alicia Roberts. Make of it what you want. So I was obviously after quick reads this month, and where I thought, oh, a Girlhood short, that'll be quick, where it wasn't, I thought I'll read Murder in the Family by Cara Hunter, which is not particularly a short book, but this is written all in like script and mixed media. It's a sort of crime novel. You're reading each episode of a true crime TV show that's trying to unearth the murderer of Luke Ryder, who is the stepdad of the producer, and it's this big crime that was never resolved, so now they're taking a new look at it with, is it 8 experts? 6 experts, says it right there. So you're with them as you work out the case. This is very quick to read because of the mixed media, and also I found it really engaging and I really wanted to continue reading. I thought it had some fun twists and turns in it. And to be honest, that hasn't happened for a long time, that I've picked up a book and wanted to do nothing other than read that book. Obviously I can't, but it hasn't happened for a very long time, so that was nice. I would say though, it is a little bit predictable. I did guess a lot of where it went, but I wasn't really angry about it because how they got there was also very interesting, and more the earlier twist in the case rather than the latter twist in the case I found more interesting, because I sort of had guessed the latter part of it. I did not guess the start of it. Because we've got 6 experts, it did take me some time to work out which person was what. At the beginning of the book you have like CVs essentially for each of the experts, so it took me a little bit of time to actually work out who was who and what they were, and because you've got policemen, FBI, not FBI, New York, NYPD, a psychiatrist, a lawyer, a journalist, that kind of thing. So, but once I did get the hang of who each person was, it made life easier and it was really interesting. Also, at the end of each episode, again, I'm not going to be able to find it now, am I? At the end of each episode you have this sort of chat room thing. That's quite difficult to read in the paperback bind up because it's too tight and you can't, I do not break spines, so I couldn't bend it quite to read it, so that was very difficult. Also the font's a bit faint. And yeah, it's a good social commentary really on sort of true crime and the dramatisation of it, and how you got to leave things on a cliffhanger. So certain things are revealed right at the end of shows and things like that, and certain information isn't shared with relevant people so that they can get raw emotions from when they find out live on camera and that kind of thing. So really interesting look at that kind of world as well. So yeah, would recommend Murder in the Family. If you're one that really hates a book, if you can guess where it goes, probably wouldn't bother with it. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and we'll be keeping hold of this one because I really want Pete to read it. It feels like one that he might just do so. So yeah, I've also heard, while I was looking at what other people thought of it, that the audiobook's really good for this. It's got a full cast. I obviously read it physically, but yeah, if you wanted to, there's that option as well. So in between that, obviously, as I said, I'm trying not to mindlessly scroll on my phone, although today it hasn't really worked. So I then went on to, I finished another novella. This one's called Perfect Crime. It's by Jack Erickson. I think this one's even shorter. I read it in one sitting, pretty much. And it's essentially a wife kills her husband and she thinks she's got away with it. She has done the perfect crime. Yeah, it was really bad, like really, really bad. It's very short. The writing starts and it's just all similes and metaphors, which gets rather grating. And then it suddenly switches and it's not that anymore, and then it's really simplistic. So yeah, the writing style was pretty pants. The story was really bad because it's all tell. They don't there's no shock to this book at all. I mean, it attempted to do it at the end, but it really wasn't. And logically, what they've done in this book can't actually happen. The very end of this would never have been allowed. So yeah, I didn't like it, but again, it was like 40 pages long. It's now off my Kindle, and yeah, it was something that I was able to read during her naps, as was the next book, which is The Darcy Code by Elizabeth Ashton. I didn't realise going into this that this is the 7th book in a series, but I read it anyway. It's set, I'm assuming, Regency. It's basically around Pride and Prejudice time, Mr. Darcy, all of that kind of stuff. It's a historical thingy that I'm not sure why I have it, because when I got my Kindle I was like, no, I don't read historical fiction, I don't like it. So why would I have picked this up, particularly when it's the 7th in a series? But hey ho, who knows what my brain was thinking back in 2012, 2011, whenever it was that I got my Kindle. I won't be reading the rest. You can read this book without having that. There's probably like a small part to the story that you're like, might have been helpful if I'd read the others to know what this was, but actually it doesn't matter. We are following Anna as she's making her debut into society and looking for a husband. She falls for a gentleman who she thinks is going to work really well. He's a bit of a dick. Yeah, it starts as a typical romance, and then it goes into this sort of political element about Napoleon and wars in France, and then it tries to come back to the romance but doesn't really quite manage it because you haven't quite developed the person that she ends up with and their relationship and how that's going to work. So all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to marry her, and you're like, really? But you two barely have spent any time together. Anna is very spirited, so also I can't see how it would have worked that way, and certainly the gentleman that she ended up with, I'm not sure in reality would have, but what do I know? I wasn't around in that time period. Do they have a connection? I'm not convinced. Again, short story, did have slightly more interest in it, what with the other elements, but again, glad it's off my Kindle. That's sort of been the theme of those ones. So yeah, that was The Darcy Code by Elizabeth Ashton. The last book that I read was a reread, and that was The Selection by Kiera. I first read this book probably 2017, 2018. I've also read the second, so The Elite, which you can just about see on the camera here. And I think I read that one in Japan, so that would have been 2019. and I've always wanted to finish the series and wanted a copy of them because I enjoyed it. And I bought the box set last year and then never did it, and then just put it off, and then all of a sudden I had a hankering. I was like, I really want to read the selection, so that's what I did. This is cheesy but fun. We're following America's singer, who is like 2 casts up from the bottom. No, 3 casts up from the bottom. She's a 5, 8 is the lowest. And she is chosen from her like state to go into the selection, which is a competition, essentially a reality competition because it is recorded, where the prince of their land is picking a wife. It's not the best written thing ever, but it's fun and I enjoy it, and I enjoyed it this time. And I have an intention of reading 1 a month now, so that I can actually finish the series, because I really did get into this and was like, this is fun, I want to carry on with this world. It is dystopian to a certain extent, obviously what with the casts. We're in a close but not quite world like ours, and then there's like that political war part to it. Again, it's a quick read, so that's what I was after this month. It's a fairly simple thing to read, it being YA. And yeah, what I didn't remember and what I found interesting was the look about the reasons why the people were there in the selection in the first place. Obviously some want to fall in love with the prince, some are there just for the crown, some are there for their families. Our main character is there to get over another boy and to help her family. So those were interesting, but also Prince Maxon, that is his name, Maxon. It's interesting his reasons for why he keeps some of the girls in terms of, you know, political advantages and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm sure you've probably heard of this. It's very old now. I'm not late to the party because I have read it before, but it was first published, yeah, so it was first published in 2012, so I mean it is over 10 years old, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it and can't wait to continue with the series. So there you go, that was all of the books that I read in June. I don't think I've spoken about them very succinctly, so if you do have any questions, put them in the comment box below. I had fun. I've got into reading a bit more, and having those little short ones for when she naps has been helpful, and something that makes me feel less like I'm rotting away. So yeah, we'll see whether it continues. I mean, she changes all the time, so next week she probably won't even nap on me ever again. But there we go. I need to go because my dinner's probably nearly ready and I'm rambling like nobody's business. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't, please go ahead and subscribe. There will be stuff coming up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.